from the time that it happened was from primary school. It was in either year 5 or year 6. What caused it was we went to our local library on a school trip, and we were meeting a childhood author, and he was like doing children's books that were caricatures. We went and met him, and I got picked out with 2 other kids, and he was going to do live caricatures of us in front of like the rest of the class. So when he did mine, because I got picked, I ended up with like a short, fat, like version of me eating a bag of chips, which was hilarious to everybody. But to me, at that moment in time, that was the one thing. Because as a child, I was chubby. I wasn't fat. I was chubby. But that was the single spark of that moment of, is that what I look like? That was the exact moment that it all started. So that just caused the, like binge eating, then restrictive eating, going to doing excessive workouts as a kid, which I didn't know what I was doing in my bedroom at home. At that moment in time, at that age, I wasn't aware what like body dysmorphia, and even growing up, I was very unaware of it. I'd never heard of the term. It was only when I'd gone down understanding more deep health education and what it was I was feeling, and actually how common it is with people. Yeah.
You said earlier on that you are now the person you needed back then. How would someone like you have helped that person?
I would have first been the person to say that that is somebody's depiction that doesn't define who you are. Realizing at that moment in time, if I could go back and say, you've got your whole life in front of you to be whatever you want to be, to, make your footprint, your mark, and mold into the person that you're destined to become.
Coach me if you can. Coach me if you can. Coach me if you can. Coach me if you can.
What's up, lovely people? Welcome back to another episode of the Coach Me If You Can podcast. I am your host, Peter Charles Weller, and welcome to this very exclusive corner of chaos. The corner of chaos that is my life. Today, into it, I welcomed Tom Hudson, overall health coach and an amazing human being. Overall health coach, what does someone like that do? Well, I struggled for years with being obese, with GI issues, with chronic hand eczema. So I saw so many doctors, dermatologists at the hospital, GI specialists, you name it, GPs. And every single time it felt like they were sitting on the opposite side of the table. And I never had someone on my side of the table sitting next to me, looking through all the results, building a strategy and using the doctors, the hospitals, etc. as and when needed. And a health coach like Tom is someone that does that with you. So you can do all the tests you can imagine and you build a strategy together that leads you to a better health for yourself and for family members. So we spoke about body dysmorphia. We spoke about how that started in his life and the impact of that, how common it is, but also how he managed to turn the tide on such a serious condition of the mind. And it was such an inspiring story because he explains that how supportive people around him, people who introduced him to gymming, but also having supportive people around him. Parenting played a big part in his life, and he completely turned the tide on that and went from a very destructive path to a very inspiring path where now he helps other people unlock health through nutrition, through fitness. And I'm going to be working with Tom together for sure. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Reach out to Tom if you want to improve the health in your life. I will be for sure. I hope he's back for more episodes. I want him sitting on my side of the table, coaching me through my health goals. And I want you guys along with me in the journey, or along with us on the journey. So enjoy Tom Hudson. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Tom, I am very excited to talk to you. Ever since we had our get to know you, I felt like you're the one who can definitely help me become a healthier version of me. It's definitely a life priority. I did a Wheel of Life assessment, and I remember back in 2022, I gave my health a 2.5 out of 10. Now it's a lot higher, but I'm not done yet. I'm just getting started. So I'm really looking forward to the call. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on, Peter. And as you mentioned, we have spoken previously, and I found your journey fascinating, coming from my background, and it was really interesting to hear that. Immediately, I knew this was going to be an entertaining episode, and certainly we're going to have a lot to talk about and share.
Let's go.
So let's do it.
Maybe to kick us off, Tom, what do you do? Why do you do it?
So I'm an online integrative health coach or functional health coach. It tends to have a number of titles. Yes, it isn't a protected title, but it's my responsibility. I feel now that the state of health in the world it's been on a decline for a number of years, and we've got the medical system. The medical system is fantastic. I'm not here to slam the medical system. I'm not here to talk bad about them, but it's overrun, it's overworked, and it's understaffed. And we're in a real situation whereby I think good coaches, especially myself, I come from a personal training background. And then I got so fascinated as to the deeper layers of health. So I went and I funded my own studies with the Institute of Health. I'm still studying with them. They're a phenomenal platform. I'll always mention them. I've learned from some world-class mentors and learning functional health, reading blood work, lab reports, and being able to tailor, exercise, nutrition programs and protocols for people who only just want to optimize like their body composition, but may have some more deeper layered health challenges like gut health related hormone imbalance, and just being able to be that, I'd call us the first line of defense, to help people, optimize their health and get the most from realizing that they don't have to feel like 50% and think that that's the new normal. Rely on the allopathic method of going to the doctors or struggling to get into the doctors and just feeling like they're being given tablets and told to come back in a week or two, because sometimes that is the only remedy to see if a treatment, we'll call it, is going to work. So yeah, it's led me down a very interesting path and I love it. I think it's fascinating.
And that's why you do it, because you love it?
Yeah, I think apart from the fact that it was more from my own struggles growing up, things that led me to this path were more out of self-discovery. I wouldn't say it was like a dream career, because when I was a kid, a dream career was like, I want to be a footballer. Ironically, now I hate football. So yeah, interesting, right? But it was more out of my own challenges growing up. I had to really become the person I felt like I needed growing up, and that's what's led me to this position now. And I'm grateful for it. It was hard, but I'm grateful for it.
So you became the person you needed when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think it's because this challenges I had, like I had body dysmorphia chronically as a child.
Could you define that for us just in layman's terms for someone who's never heard the term before?
Yeah, definitely. Basically, it was a huge grudge or uncomfortable about the way I appeared in my own skin. I really didn't feel comfortable. I had a perceivement that, I was inferior to everybody else. And it was interesting because I got asked the question as to what caused it. And for years I couldn't remember. And then I remembered about 2 or 3 months ago what caused it, and it made perfect sense when I remembered why it stemmed to evolve into like affecting me for so long as it did. And then with that, I developed an eating disorder which was called orthorexia nervosa, which was a huge need to constantly feel like I was eating very cleanly and tracking everything, and it was obsessive, like weighing all my foods to like the gram, tracking and logging it. The idea that that was the best way for me to, change the way I looked, because I was into the gym, I love my training, and I was holding my self-worth solely on how I appeared. And it wasn't to impress anyone else, it was probably just to impress myself. And it's such a shallow way and an unfulfilling existence when I was in that era. So yeah, those things were challenges that were in my life that I had to overcome, is the
What
word
time
for it.
span are we talking? How long did these challenges?
Yeah, from the time that it happened was from primary school. It was in either year 5 or year 6. What caused it was we went to our local library on a school trip, and we were meeting a childhood author called Corky Paul. I don't want to drop his name in, but that's what he was called. And he was like doing children's books that were caricatures. We went and met him, and I got picked out with 2 other kids, and he was going to do live caricatures of us in front of like the rest of the class. So when he did mine, because I got picked, I ended up with like a short, fat, like version of me eating a bag of chips, which was hilarious to everybody. But to me, at that moment in time, that was the one thing, because as a child I was chubby. I wasn't fat, I was chubby. But that was the single spark of that moment of, is that what I look like? You know, that, and it resonated when I thought back to it. That was the exact moment that it all started. So that just caused the, like binge eating, then restrictive eating, going to doing excessive workouts as a kid, which I didn't know what I was doing in my bedroom at home. Yeah, so that kind of sparking incident that started from primary school led all the way through secondary school, because as you get older, you then certainly become, I think, more aware and self-conscious, comparing yourself to other people. And I was doing that, like with my friends. I hung around with other people in my year, other people at school. I felt like I was inferior because I was never a big person. I was never tall, grew quite skinny with terrible posture from obviously not eating the best food and limiting food intake. So it became a challenge for sure. And it lasted with me all through secondary school. And I kind of put a brave face on it, because as a lad, you don't want to show weakness. You don't want to appear weak or inferior. Yeah, but the ironic thing is I'm very comfortable talking about it, because I understand how impactful being able to share this with other people who may have the same struggle, and realize that it isn't like a life sentence.
That's
It's,
really brave.
yeah,
And thanks for sharing. I mean, wow, what an impact a seemingly ordinary day had. Someone drew a picture, put it in front of the class. It was meant to be funny, but it had quite some ripple effects
yeah,
that you took years and years to deal with.
yeah.
You said earlier on that you are now the person you needed back then. How would someone like you have helped that person?
I would have first been the person to say that that is somebody's depiction that doesn't define who you are, and it was probably done with the right intentions. It wasn't done to, belittle me. It wasn't done. It was, as children, that's what we do. We want to, you want to make children laugh and make things funny, and it's not a true reflection of who I was. And the fact that at that moment in time, at that age, I wasn't aware what, like, body dysmorphia, and even growing up, I was very unaware of it. I'd never heard of the term. It was only when I'd gone down understanding more deep health education and what it was I was feeling, and actually how common it is with people. It's incredibly common, especially in men. Like, I know
Wow.
women, it's provocating in women's cycles, but in men, it's far more common than it gets attention for. So being now, having the education I had, and realizing at that moment in time, if I could go back and say, you've got your whole life in front of you to be whatever you want to be, to, make your footprint, your mark, and mold into the person that you're destined to become. It's not about, looking at that point of the journey and just magnifying into it and seeing that this is the end goal now, this is all it's ever going to be. And that's like retrospective thinking for me. Whereas at that moment in time, all I was ever thinking of was that current situation, and it's like a prisoner mindset.
And so the dysmorphia part, so the seeing something different that came from this image, someone introducing an image, that's what you are. That's not the image you had in your head. And then this kind of relationship with the mirror, the broken mirror, kind of that's where it kind of started. Wow. Yeah. Again, thanks for sharing. And if someone's listening, he maybe identifies with parts of that story, is there a looking back now at maybe turning points in that story where you went from a path that was self-destructive, if you can say,
Yeah.
to an amazing path? I mean, my impression is that you're on a very amazing path now. You're having impact. You're helping people with their health, arguably one of the most important things. You highlighted very clearly society needs that. So maybe someone listening who identifies with that, what were some of the turning points in that trajectory from a destructive path to a very positive and impactful path?
Yeah, for me, it was, education was a big part of it for me. I found that I was hyper interested in health and anatomy, physiology. So reading into what was actually fueling my body. And I took away the biggest thing that I took away from it. I ditched this appearance-based, surface level appearance need to meet what I perceived as society's standard of acceptance. And today's age now is far worse than when I had it growing up. So, like, social media is a great
There's
thing,
no
but it's also,
Instagram, there's no social media. So you already struggled with that topic so much for years without.
yes. And I
And
could
that
only believe for children now growing up, it's far, far worse, unfortunately, because as much as social media has given us the ability to connect with people around the world in an instant, we are now giving a rose-tinted lens or a warped perception as to what society deems as the standard.
images
Because,
on phones, arguably, well, not like the image, the caricature of you, but a warped image of an ideal. This
yeah,
is what we accept.
yeah.
So it's gone, instead of a picture being drawn by someone, it's all over social media.
Yeah, and and I know that social media is very easy to mislead people and like perceive or put out there that what the ideal standard of perfection is, or making people feel inadequate. So when I came to then realizing that what worked for me so well was if I can actually set myself like performance or sport-based goals, things that weren't related to how I looked, it was far more fulfilling to be able to achieve them and see what my body could actually do and what my body actually looked. And for me, that was
Can you
like
say that again, Tom?
what worked for me. Sorry, what worked for me. What I was saying was is I took away this idea of the standard that would make me happy was how I looked, and I focused more on performance-based goals, like in sports and hobbies that I found interesting, giving myself milestones and challenges to do in sport, and or whether it was like a certain target I wanted to hit with a lift or a performance in a hobby, was game changing because I went from judging myself on how I looked to being able to see what was possible, what my body could do. And that was like the secret sauce for me that really propelled me into most of my fascination is to, all right, human performance is actually really, this was a drug that, a high that I just couldn't explain to people. It
Kind
was
of
just
feeling
so fulfilling.
powerful while achieving, your body being powerful, you
Yeah.
realizing that your body can achieve so much.
Yeah.
And
Inner
okay,
strength is what is the real secret ingredient, and giving yourself a purpose to do something, because our body is a piece of biomechanical engineering masterpiece. It truly is. When you see some of the feats, what people can do in their selected sports or, their passions, and you realize, wow, like the human body can actually do that. And then you realize, I am a person just like them. So what's possible for me? And that was it. It was just an infatuation with it then. It became a real enjoyment to be able to push myself physically, improve that. The biggest challenge I have isn't me against other people, it's me versus me.
Hmm. How were you introduced to sport and the gym? And someone who was very much struggling on that path we described, to someone who falls in love, arguably, with achieving stuff with the body. How were you introduced to that?
I know, firstly, my mum and dad were great when I was growing up because they knew that I think that they sort of understood that I may have had challenges when I was younger, but they sort of nurtured me towards sports. So my mum always took me to football, and bless her heart, I said earlier I don't like football anymore, and I don't. But when I was younger, it was everything. And she took me to training, to matches in this blistering cold, terrible wind, camaraderie. And, I made great friends playing football growing up. And that was part of the reason that I got into it probably so much. But when it came to the strength training, my dad then took me to like boxing circuits at his workplace, and there was a gym there that we could use. So I went and trained with him. And I just enjoyed the physical labor side of it because I think, feeling strong, as you mentioned earlier, it's something you can't buy, and it's something that no one can give you unless you are willing to go and put in that sweat equity, or that very long enduring desire to want to see what's possible. Because being strong in life has so many benefits to just helping your quality of life in general. And I think for me, like, I had such good parents, and I was very lucky to meet some great coaches and mentors that, helped me to build the confidence to then tackle the gym on my own when I came of age. And that then was the whole reason that I got into it. And I was around supportive and encouraging people. Again, very lucky to be so, because there's so much now on social media where people are probably looking for support, and you can put a video of yourself out there, pursuing your passion, and there's going to be someone that hates you for it for no reason and just talks crap to you. And no wonder it makes people want to give up.
So listening and thinking to your parents, they created environments for you
Yeah.
where that were positive, right? Where you could apply yourself in a positive environment. You mentioned football, you mentioned going to the gym, boxing. So for parents listening, maybe that's an idea to think of environments where one can apply oneself. It can be art, it can be, right? It can be anything, but just different environments where, creating the environment. I think your mum taking you to football in terrible weather shows the dedication, but she was creating a positive environment for you.
Yeah, what a diamond she was for it as well. It's a debt I can't ever repay for her, for that, because she endured the weather that she hates just to make me happy, which was, as a parent, as a child, that's a debt I just can never repay. But the power parents have to influence their children is incredibly powerful. Now, if you set good examples for your kids, or you nurture them to follow just good lifestyle traits that set them up for life, because I'm going to say it, and it may sound controversial, but raising strong kids helps to prevent weak adults, in the sense of physically and mentally, in both senses. If you can give your children as much insight and give them as much nurturing to, embrace positive habits and lifestyle traits that they see their parents doing, I think as children, like, children are watching 24/7, and they pay attention to everything. As a child now, I probably may not have been aware of it, but I've seen it with especially my brother's kids. They see everything that my brother does, everything I do, and they remember. And I'm like, this is really, really important, that I want to give them the best chance and support at, you know, giving them the greatest head start of, becoming strong, resilient kids. And then it's just going to hopefully set them up in a better position for adulthood and all the challenges it brings.
I forgot to ask one question, so we're going to do a quick sidestep and a step back. But just in terms of one's own image of one's body, when do you think, say you're a parent, say you're an uncle, when do you think is a kind of a red flag moment where you might observe someone, maybe someone very close to you, where a red flag would go up in your mind that is unhealthy? When it comes to that, what might be a micro moment or a sentence or something that you would, as an uncle, as a friend, look out for?
Yeah, great question. There's probably a few things you look out for. One thing being excessive exercise. I think that can be quite an easy one to pay attention to. If you notice that your kids, or as I do with my nieces and nephews, if they ever became incredibly focused on the way they looked, and exercising extensively for every day of the week, because that's what I was doing at one point, straight away you can probably say that's not a good thing. It's not needed. The second thing being is with food. Food can be a really powerful dictator as well. My mum got worried about me because I wouldn't eat a lot of the things that either should be cooking, or I would obsess over weighing everything that I was eating.
At what age was this, Tom?
Yeah, that was in my teenage years, so I'd probably been 14 up to 18. It was probably like the worst phase of it. And you can pay attention and you can see that if someone's becoming that obsessive with it, I'm not saying that it isn't, because tracking your calories can be a very useful tool, especially for people that are like really focused in a body composition based sport, or if they need to make weight for a competition. I understand that. It's not slamming it there. But just for the everyday generic day-to-day life of not really doing it for a purpose other than thinking that it's going to improve the way you look, they're red flags, because we need to be very in tune. And I think we're very disconnected as to the social and emotional barriers that have been warped from us growing up and what we've been exposed to, especially kids in these generations that have grown up around social media, as we've said, there is, unfortunately, there's so many pages now that actually glorify like eating disorders, and they glorify like really bad habits and traits, and young men that jumping on performance enhancing drugs a lot earlier. Women are becoming more common with it as well. It's a totally topic on its own right that we could dive into, but again, it's all down to like trying to get the spotlight on you, and go viral is like the word for it. And because it's the perception of it's the stairway to fame or attention and money, and it's very surface level, and it's sad that people don't realize that there's so much more to life than chasing attention from strangers on the internet who you'll never meet. So for me personally, I think red flags people could pay attention to is if someone's like obsessively worrying over the quality of the food and weighing it out, if they're exercising to extensive limits, and if they become very socially, I know for me, I became very socially reclused, because you would feel like you couldn't go out and have food with your friends because it was out of your control what you'd be eating, what was being cooked, that you were probably tired and sore from the training, that you just couldn't be able to go and enjoy other ventures because the routine was set that I'd have to be going to the gym or exercising rather than being able to just go and have fun or downtime, unwind. Those are things to really pay attention to, because a lot of people will not speak about it. They will suffer in silence with it, guess like I did. So just being able to, if you see it with people, just, and a powerful thing is that education is so useful for people. That's what was so useful for me. It's been amazing for clients. Give them the insight and show them that what you're doing isn't supported by what we see in the best outcomes from studies and meta-analysis and research, and what the latest literature is showing us. And that was, to me, to see, I'm very like analytical, was really, really useful. Really, really useful. For me, it was.
Lovely. Just to finish on that, it can be as simple if one wants to do something, introducing a new environment, introducing a positive environment. I mean, that's such a gentle touch, but it had such a powerful ripple effect in your life. I remember my mum doing the same with me when I was working at the wrong kind of places in my uni years, and worked in a strip club. I thought that was extremely cool as a bartender, But I remember my mum kind of sitting back, leaning back, and not even lecturing me, but just taking me to places that were positive, with inspiring workplaces, just introducing me to the heights you can achieve. Back then, it was very much career for me. But I mean, what a lovely thing for people to hang on to.
Yeah.
Introducing a new environment can be a big one.
Without a
I
doubt.
don't think we need a warm-up, Tom, at all. If anything, we need to cool off. No, but we're going to do it anyway. It's a fun segment called Fact or Fiction. I love the first one. If this podcast has made you laugh, think, or question your entire life plan while loading up the dishwasher or doing a diaper, do me a favor, please subscribe. Hit that follow button on Spotify. It's free and it helps me more than you know. And yes, it means the absolute world to me. Now, real talk. I don't just want listeners, I want a community. So I want feedback, ideas, or a coach you swear by. I want to hear from you. So either hit me up in the Spotify comments section or head to www.coachmeifyoucan.show and send me a message. I'll actually read them and I'll actually reply. And if you've never done a Wheel of Life assessment, drop me a note. I'll send you one for free. Once you get your results, you can choose the category and I will find you a coach for a free get to know you session. No catch, no weird funnel, no weird PDFs, just real conversations. I want to get people coached. So yeah, go to www.coachmeifyoucan.show. Be nosy, say hi. Back to the show. The gut is the second brain and controls more than just digestion.
Yeah, I'd say it's fact. I think the gut and the brain is both linked by what's called the HPA axis and the vagus nerve. And without a doubt, it is the moment where the outside world meets the inside world of our body. So when we see the key role of a lot of neurotransmitter function in the brain comes from GI health. And not only this, a lot of GI issues will manifest in certain ways and then show in other factors. So like gut dysbiosis or reactions to food and allergies will manifest with like skin reactions. I think it's so true that even though we're very early still in what we know of the GI tracts, it is so in depth. There's still so much research to go into it. Without a doubt, I think it's incredibly impactful that I wish there was far more taught on it.
Wow.
Because it's so impactful to people's health and well-being. So it's 100%. I think it's a fact that it is, without a doubt, closest thing to the second brain in the body, we could say.
Love it. Reducing inflammation is key to reversing chronic diseases.
Yeah, I'd agree with this as well. I'd say it's fact. Now, to the limit that we stop inflammation is now questionable because we know that inflammation is needed for bodily autonomy, repair, regeneration, and trying to stop it altogether isn't also the best thing for us to do. But in terms of chronic inflammation, yes, we need to 100% limit our exposure to this. And there's loads of lifestyle ways of doing it. But it's also what is causing the fires is the biggest thing people need to do to like prevent the fire spreading is what I'd say. So it's not so much all the fancy stuff we can do to reduce inflammation, it's what's causing the fire and trying to take away that fuel source as soon as possible.
Let's pick up that one later in the show because I'd love to dive into the first two, actually, nutrition and inflammation. That would be lovely.
Yeah, definitely.
The food industry designs products to be addictive.
Oh, yeah. Again, I'm going to go with it and say yes. And I think we see
You can caveat it. You can caveat it.
Yeah, I think we see the food industry understand that they want to create customers, and we are driven by salty, sweet, fatty, umami-based flavors that keep people coming back. So, would I say it is done intentionally is the sole purpose to derail health? No, because you could argue that people need to, be able to eat within moderation is the key word, and understand that some things aren't the best for your health and the dose makes the poison. That comes with healthy food as well, without a doubt. But would I say they're engineered to be hyper palatable, quick digesting, quick instant dopamine reward? Yes, because as a business, that's what you want. You want customers buying your product and you want them to keep coming back for more.
Healthy food is expensive.
I think some healthy food is. Some healthy food isn't. When we look at it in terms of fresh produce, I've certainly seen that it's become more expensive. So fruits and vegetables, I would always say that when you have to buy organic and they cost more, I don't agree with it, but it's how it is. And then certainly what always puzzles me is how I can buy, let's just say turkey dinosaurs as a random frozen food item.
What's
How
the
I
item?
can buy something.
What's the item?
Say again?
What's the item, Tom?
Turkey dinosaurs.
What's that?
So they are dinosaur shaped, like turkey breast in a breadcrumb batter. They were like the growing up favorite food as a child for me.
I mean, yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, yeah. So turkey dinosaurs in the freezer aisle. Probably most people may be aware of them. If not, maybe new for you. But it always puzzles me how something of that nature that's got 10 plus ingredients in it, let's just say, picking it off, there's probably far more, but let's say 10. How that can have 10 ingredients, so all individually processed, shipped together, made into a product, put in a bag, and they are cheaper to buy than me buying a kilo of just raw beef mince. It's quite, and you sit there and think, how is it possible? And the beef mince is, in my eye, I see it as a great superfood. It has a phenomenal nutritional profile. But again, to buy the same weight for weight, it's far more expensive. And yet it's one ingredient. And you think, well, how do I encourage people to eat better choices and better health when ultra processed food appears to be always on offer and always cheaper? So it's hard. It's hard to, and I understand people, especially with the cost of living crisis, the way the world is, and people are on budgets to, food is just one aspect of like the daily expenditure that people need money for.
Yeah.
And you can understand why people go for the cheaper, easier options because they don't have the ability to afford the not necessarily glamorous options, but just eating healthier does come with an increased price tag to it, unfortunately.
And I think it ties into what you mentioned earlier about education as well, or not knowing enough, not having enough expertise that if you're standing in the kitchen, how to be maybe creative and still get something healthy in, yeah. So, I mean, thanks for playing fact or fiction. I love that section.
Yeah, they were great. They were great. Funnily enough, no fictions either.
Yeah, good.
Put up for debate for people, but yeah.
What's up, lovely people? Quick one from me. Just wanted to let you know I've sent my poop through the mail 5 times. Not because I lost a bet with Robin Waite, but because of science. Now, in one of my favorite episodes, I sat down with the CEO of Inner Buddies, a young, up-and-coming Dutch company, a spin-off of Maastricht University, and the company that makes this whole poop in a box experience actually insightful and fun. So they analyze poop. They do this to study the microbiome, to study your health. And I've done it 5 times throughout this journey, lasting over 3 years with them. I've lost 30 kilos. I've defeated chronic hand eczema, something the doctors told me I would have to put up for life. And in this episode with Crystal Creek, the CEO, we look at my results of one of my recent poop tests. And the gut microbiome results showed a suspicious absence of farting. I'm just telling you one of the funny insights. But anyway, my gut, silent library, right? Which has got me thinking, kind of want to see my wife's test too. But anyway, I digress. So in this episode, she unlocks her brain when it comes to nutrition and the small but powerful tweaks you and I can both make to our nutrition that have a massive upside when it comes to our overall gut microbiome and our overall health. Right? So check out the boys and girls at www.innerbuddies.com. Get yourself one of these poop in a box test kits and use the code WellerGuts at checkout. Now, back to the show. So this is where I typically hand over the reins to the coach. And we can fill about 50 minutes on whatever topic you fancy. Yeah, so we can pick off on nutrition, a topic I'm very passionate about, made massive gains over the last, 3 years. We can touch on inflammation, but then again, I hand the reins over to you. I made a life assessment where I have a pretty good idea where I was struggling. And yeah, so I'm talking too much. I'm handing over the reins to you, Tom.
Yeah, I think I would actually love to talk around. It's going to encompass your story as well, because I think it's great to share, this approach to investigative health for ourselves and the usefulness of working with good trusted coaches. I think as a topic, people see health as a luxury. And I'm so passionate about trying to share with people that your health is the foundation of everything else you do in life. You know this yourself.
Pyramid, yeah.
It is without a doubt. And we have now raised a culture whereby we either want quick fixes or I would say it's dangerous. The body positivity movement has positives to it, but I think it's also walks a very fine line of what is healthy and what is putting feelings before facts in terms of some of the images and the now mindsets that we're generating from it. And the fact that if you really want to get healthy and help yourself, sometimes the first port of call isn't your doctor. And I will stress that you have far more control over your health than you realize. And even though we aren't educated in it particularly well, I'd love to see that change in the school system. You can go and do certain things. You can have tests done. You can do simple things like a food diary. If you're realizing that you're getting health challenges with the food you're eating, you're constantly bloated, you're feeling discomfort, you're feeling that, you get massive energy fatigue or brain fog. There's simple things you can do to think, okay, I have an issue and I want to know what's the root cause. Food diaries are incredibly useful. You just say what food you ate and you'll just track your feelings on and how you are post-meal within the 30 minutes to an hour. And it's like a little log, because if I was to ask you, what did you eat last week, on Monday, and how did you feel? You probably won't remember.
No.
But if you've written it down, and it's not there to judge what you've eaten, it's a tool of tracking data and
So
saying
important.
what I ate and how I felt. Then you can look and see what foods like really seem to agree with you in terms of I didn't get any pain, I felt great after eating that, tons of energy. It's useful data. Or if you're realizing for a big one, breads is a very common thing people eat, and they will report bloating because you can get celiac, gluten sensitivity, or you can be celiac, and obviously it will cause massive issues for you. But you can then track, okay, well, when I've eaten bread, I feel bloated, I feel uncomfortable, and I seem to get a lot of brain fog around it. It's a useful bit of information. With
Yeah.
health, we just haven't ever been educated as to paying attention to signs and symptoms. Our body's trying to tell us that something isn't right. And we can take such more control than we realize when we either have done a listening and reading to podcasts or education ourselves, or we've worked with a coach that genuinely, because I genuinely care with everyone I work with. I don't get any reward from taking money from somebody to work with them and getting them no results. I feel like I've failed. My whole reason for doing what I do is money is a tool in life to be able to live and have experiences. But fulfillment of changing someone's health status is far more rewarding because I mentioned it earlier at the start. Most people, when you speak to them now, they are at 50% probably of how good they could feel, and that is their new normal set point because they've been in that position for so long. And there's so much more potential there. There's so much more ability to not wake up in the morning feeling fatigued and knackered and no energy, and then relying on caffeine endlessly, and then this is going to disrupt your sleep-wake cycle if you're drinking it too excessively, and then it's just going to start tanking your sleep, and it's going to affect your hormone imbalance, and it's going to be a constant roller coaster of instant pick me up of poor food choices, riding that blood sugar roller coaster. And everyone probably resonates with a lot of people that lifestyle. I know you mentioned yourself when you had obviously previous challenges that you overcame. Everyone's been there. And it's because sometimes we have a taboo where we're a bit sensitive, we don't want to talk about it, and it's just seen as must be normal and everyone must be like it then. And it isn't. The way you feel is there's so much potential to feel so much better than you do. If you're realizing that any of those symptoms resonate with you, there's so much improvement you can make. Small things can make big impact. And one thing that I've very fortunate to become a part of was using integrative blood work. So when people get blood results, so they go and have a private test done, they can send me the results over. We can go through them and have a look at cross correlations with a biofeedback marker questionnaire. It's called the Blueprint I use. And you can cross correlate where someone's got nutrient deficiencies, they've got metabolic dysfunction, or if they've got quite clear hormone imbalance or challenges to their health. And now it's cross correlating to the questionnaire that they fill in, and realizing that then you're getting insight to what your body specifically may need to help. So important. And yet, how many people go and have a regular blood test?
How many people know that that's an option? I mean, you mentioned so many tools there. And just to touch on the last thing you said before we take a couple of steps back, when I sat down next to an orthomolecular coach, it was the first time in my journey from being obese, 113 kilos. Check the I know body mass index is not the ideal one, etc. But for me, I just wanted to see what is my weight and how does that fit into kind of these boxes. So for me, it just started the obese category. And so if I look back now in the last 4 years, I've gone from obese through overweight to healthy. I'm still not done. But before I get sidetracked in that, because I can talk about that for days with you, working with someone like you, like that orthomolecular coach, it was the first time in my experience that I felt like someone sat on my side of the table.
Yeah.
And I sat down there, we did food intolerance test, we did blood work, there were ones that looked at omega-3s and vitamin Ds and all of these kind of things. So there came a point, and we need to unpack this properly because I'm throwing a lot of things together now, but I had chronic eczema. So a lot of inflammation. We touched on that earlier. There was a point in my life where I was feeling so bad every day, and then I wasn't even able to do my daughter's nappies without sausage fingers. I remember describing them as Bockwurst, the German sausage fingers, right? So something was terribly wrong. And just unpacking all of that throughout that whole cycle from being extremely unhealthy to being relatively healthy, the first time that I felt like someone sat on the table was this orthomolecular coach. And it came at a breaking point where I thought, I've been to the hospital, I've spoken to the dermatologist, they've given me steroid creams. This can't be it.
Yeah.
What else? What else can we do? And they didn't start, I don't want to bash dermatologists, but what I was getting there didn't work for me because it wasn't a sustainable solution. It was, here are creams, you put them on, it goes away. The moment I stopped using them, it came back with a vengeance, right?
Yeah.
And it put me in a stressful state, depending on this cream. So in this experience, one of the pivotal moments, unfortunately, in my journey from being obese to being healthy, it came right at the end where I was very healthy, but I still had the eczema. And just to paint that picture for people, you can have someone on your side of the table. We're talking to one of them now. There are many of them. You mentioned doing blood work. You sit together with a client. You look at the blood work together. I went to that appointment, no expectations. What's this funky title, orthomolecular?
Yeah.
What's he or she going to be like? She had Post-its on every page of my medical records because I dumped the whole lot.
Yeah.
Here are the combined works of Peter Charles. The folder was quite thick. Highlighted bits, Post-its, challenged me on bits, and she was on my side of the table. That's how it felt. And through all of these touch points with the health system, for some reason, when I was talking to normal doctors, I say, they were on the other side, and I had to prove that my issue was valid, that it had an impact on my life, and I had to kind of almost like an interview that my issue is worthy. So yeah, I just had to touch on that based on what you're saying, and I thought that was an important message for anybody who's listening. Find someone to sit on your side of the table. If whatever the issue, find someone. There are people out there, and I think that's such a powerful thing, and I'm so glad that you do that with your coaches because it had a big impact. It would have arguably, I would have made the turn a lot quicker if I had that in the beginning of those 4 years.
Exactly.
I had it when I was pretty healthy, but just the eczema, which I had to knock on the head, which I'm still learning about, right? Completely debilitating disease. People think skin issue. Okay. No, you wake up in the morning, you look at your hands, and the first thing I asked myself when it was really bad was, what kind of a hand day am I going to have?
Yeah.
Now that, speaking of warping, it warped my whole kind of start of the day in terms of the first thing I would think about is what's wrong with my life? What's wrong with my hands? What's wrong is going to determine what kind of a day it was. So yeah, that was a low moment. But I think a turning point that I got rather late in the journey was sitting with someone on my side of the table. And speaking of diamond mums, I had one too. And from a very young age, I can remember her juggling in the kitchen, cooking curries.
Yeah.
And I think I was so fortunate enough to have someone like that when I was, what would I have been, 21, cooking with her, learning how to make this famous chicken curry my mum made.
Yeah.
And everybody came together to have. I think the beginning of this journey from obese to healthy, I started exploring in the kitchen, and I wanted healthy food that doesn't make me miss the unhealthy stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge, but I had a good foundation. And I think I was, again, about environments, parents introducing children into a nice environment. She introduced me to the kitchen, and it's something I've done with my daughter now. I mean,
Awesome.
I was talking to a mindset coach a couple of days ago, Tom Godfrey, and we were talking about people whose opinion are most important to me. And my daughter and my son's right up there with my wife's. I now learned my own opinion is also needs to be number one. But that was a learning for me. But I'm so happy that I'm passing that on to my daughter. My son's too young, but I plonk her on the kitchen counter and we go through the vegetables. She can name you all the vegetables. And
Awesome.
yeah, and we did funny kind of little jokes. An aubergine, it's genie aubergine. It's umber cucumber. You know, we'd make a game for her to remember these things. And picking her up from the daycare one day, they said, like, she knows all the vegetables. She knew more than some of the mentors at the daycare.
Yeah.
And that's just because I kind of gamified it, because I had a lot of passion to give for the topic. And it started with the quiz, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And yeah, so flexible where we go from here. But I just wanted to mention maybe a lesson here. Find someone to sit on your side of the table and get cooking, which for me was a really, really good one.
Without a doubt, I think the kitchen is, ironically, the best medicine cabinet you'll find. And it is. I think it's the nutraceutical approaches to your body builds, repairs, regenerates from the, I call it data you feed yourself, because food is ingestible data. We are like a living computer, and you can feed it great information, or you can feed it information that's empty and void of any nutritional value, we could call it, in the majority. And it's going to affect the running of the PC, i.e. yourself. So having skills to cook in the kitchen really does help set you up for the whole confusion side of what to cook tonight. If you are, I'm not saying you have to be talented in the kitchen, but if you're comfortable being able to cook things like base ingredients, put a meal together, it puts you in such a stronger position in terms of managing what food to eat, setting yourself up for the week. Because everyone probably spends far too much time thinking they don't know what to cook. And because of that fatigue syndrome that sits in with it and the overwhelm or the confusion, we turn to convenience because it's there for a reason. It's there to give us a bit of time back, but it's going to be at the hands of, do we know 100% what's in it? Is it what's usually going to be effective for our health and well-being? And most people probably think they're making wise choices without realizing that they could be doing something that's the complete opposite. And yet because they not 100% certain if something is going to be healthy is the word, but what's going to be good data for them to consume and what isn't going to be good data for them to consume. And the convenience thing of time has really made us dependent on that. And people don't realize how much they actually pay for it. Convenience is great, but you pay a premium for convenience sometimes. A meal day, like meal deals in the working day, what are very common for everyone that I know that works on the go. Like £5-6 a day, and you get a sandwich, a bag of crisps, and a drink. I mean, to me, it's crap. But that's the typical meal deal for probably 90% of the UK, especially.
It's the wrong kind of convenience, and there's convenience in the kitchen when it comes to healthy eating. You know, you can stack the deck, you can plan your kitchen in a way that you can cut corners, you can cook a healthy meal, and you can maximize the outcome. I mean, we for instance, one of my favorite kitchen items is a gigantic Vietnamese soup pot, and when we cook for 10, 15 people. We cook lentil soups, tomato soups, we cook bone broth, and we had to buy a separate freezer that's in the shed. The biggest thing in the shed is this gigantic freezer where we stack all these meals, because I realized as a parent, I don't want to go back to my old ways. I want to provide. I want to make sure that everybody's getting healthy food in that tastes good. So when I cook, I now cook for, let's say, 20 portions. It takes me one time to make. It doesn't take longer. Making tomato soup for a lot of portions doesn't take that much longer.
I'm so happy you mentioned that, because batch cooking is something I preach to people.
Yeah.
Do one intensive period of cooking a good hearty portion of healthy food and portion it up into, like, especially like glass or stainless steel containers is gold standard, but plastic containers can work too, as long as you're not excessively reheating them. So powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you do that, because again, it's such a useful tool to show people. And coming back to one thing you said where you show your daughter,
Yeah.
there was a quote that I was desperately trying to rack my brain for.
You got it.
It epitomizes everything you said when you were showing her about, the aubergine rhymes and the cucumber rhyming. And it was from Benjamin Franklin. It was
Okay.
a quote that I read once, and it totally made sense to me. It was, tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I'll understand. And that was one of the quotes that I had. For me, I'm very much driven by being involved with things that I if I've got an interest in something, I'm involved in it, and I pick it up and learn it so much quicker. And again, it's just a perfect example of you've gamified the whole process, and I talk about that with people with especially physical training. Gamify it, make it fun.
Yeah.
What are you going to enjoy your form of movement medicine?
Yeah.
Because it isn't weights for everybody. It could be salsa dancing. It could be hiking. It could be, playing a team-based sport. Whichever it is, gamify that process and make it as fun as possible, because the fun aspect takes away you thinking it's a chore, and it promotes consistency and discipline with it.
My daughter puts down the telly. She'll run from, if the telly's on and she sees dad in the kitchen and she sees him put the hob on and start cooking, she
Awesome.
will run and want her space on the kitchen counter. So I have to clean that. But yeah,
Awesome.
full quote, and it makes complete sense. Me having involved her, that's where the magic comes.
Yeah. But great
So,
job. Honestly, again, fantastic thing to see.
but I
It
mean,
really
it's
is.
it's something that costs me zero effort. I'm piggybacking off a passion, right? So it's
Yeah.
not work for me.
Yeah.
And I had to challenge myself in terms of how do I cook for so many people every day. I can't cook every day. Life just doesn't allow for that. So batch cooking for me was a huge part. And people think batch cooking means less tasty. Not at all. We batch cook bone broth. We batch cook so many things. A pomodoro soup, a pomodoro kind of sauce, which we use in all different kinds of dishes. The bone broth makes any dish we cook, it just gives it that extra, from a lentil soup or any soup that you need a stock for. And those are so many things kind of cutting corners. I recently found one on YouTube. It was someone who went to an Asian store, bought a kilo of peeled garlic, wazzed it up in the blender, and put it in the ice cube
Yeah.
trays.
Yeah.
And so if you're cooking a curry, if someone who's listening loves a curry, I revolutionized my curry cooking process by wazzing up garlic and ginger, putting it in the ice cube tray, putting it in a Ziploc bag, flattening it out, and making kind of these train tracks through it so that you can break off pieces. Funnily
Phenomenal.
enough, if I think of cooking a curry, the first thing I was, I've got to, cut the onions. I've got to, do that. But now I'm straight away, I jump off my seat because I'm like, right, I have that little hack. It gives me that little boost, and nothing stands in the way. And then I still cook for 20 people, and I maximize that. Yeah.
Phenomenal. And another thing I'll give you with that as well
Please.
is a lot of people with everyone knows that when they steam or boil vegetables, the water that's left behind, most people, I mean, some people save it for, stock, which you should do. I think it's a
Yep.
great idea, because a lot of the vegetables that we will boil will lose micronutrients into the water.
Yep.
So it's a valuable bit of, real estate that people throw away.
Yep.
Well, if you put it in the ice cube trays you've just mentioned, like that's one thing I do as well, put it in the ice cube tray. You've got little stock cubes that
That's
are
so
good to go.
Such a cheat. I love it.
Really useful. And this is another secret one, and this is going to sound weird, but I love making jelly. So I buy just beef gelatin powder, and I will use the stock from the water, whether it's hot or cold, depending on the jelly, what you buy, and the bloom it is. And I will make jelly pots with either fruit in them, or even if it's more decadent with like a sweeter treat in it, you can make jelly with just that stock water. So you're getting all the beneficial micronutrients. You're getting a great protein profile from the gelatin.
Healthy jelly, not the fluorescent stuff that
Yeah.
makes you glow green afterwards.
Honestly, childhood throwback, and it is my favorite thing that I make.
I can't wait to introduce my children to that, or my daughter especially. I mean, jelly has something magical about it as a child. It's wiggly and cool. So using stock water and having treats in there, kind of nutritious treats. Cool.
Yeah. Pomegranate in it for me and grapes is like one of my favorite go-tos. Jelly on top, let it set, and it's.
So if we have to unpack some lessons here for someone who might be listening, get cooking and look on YouTube. There's so much on cutting corners and being healthy, and just maybe start small, just like you would with any kind of new thing that you're trying. Start small. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, one thing that can be a real time saver and a money saver for people is, we say in the Institute, when in doubt, cooking, the spices come out to add flavour to your food. Now, buying spices in bulk, I found is a huge, huge game changer. It's the best thing you can do for your wallet. So the great example I did once, I did a post on this. I love cinnamon. So I buy Salem cinnamon online in kilo bags. It works out at about 10 to 12 pounds roughly, depending on where you buy it from. Now, to buy a lower grade cinnamon, which is called Sazerac, in the shop, in the 35 gram, the little tumbler jars, the little seasoning jars you can buy, that worked out at £2 roughly for 35 grams. So for me to buy the same equivalent in the shop as I bought online was over £60, I think it worked out at when I calculated it. So we are being convenienced again.
Mm-hmm.
It's costing you a lot of money to buy spices in the individual little pots that, yeah, they look nice and they go in the cupboard easy, but buy yourself some 2-3 kilo bags of spices that you love to use and just portion up into your own pot using a little funnel. Absolute game changer.
So
Money
good.
wise, ease wise, and the fact that you've then got it on hand. You don't need to run to the shop if you run out, when you run out of the jar. Things like that. I think bulk buying like your proteins and freezing them, I'm a huge advocate of that for people, because then you can think, okay, what can I have later? Take it out of the freezer, let it defrost for the day. Or if it's in the fridge, if you're already defrosting it, it's good to go. You're ready to cook with it. You can be really powerful when you buy your staples in bulk that you use. So like your Greek yogurts are a great example. Your frozen fruits. I know a lot of people are still very edgy about buying frozen fruits and vegetables. They are phenomenal. In some respects, you could argue they're actually more nutritionally dense because they are frozen at point source. So they maintain probably more nutritional value than those that are sat on the shelf. And there's a greater chance they're going to be less contaminated with extra pesticides and preservatives. So they are really, even though they are seen as the cheaper option, use them, because I think I would love to educate people to try and move away from good and bad food terms. Like, the best food on the planet can be very toxic for you in the wrong amount, and that's beef liver, but it is the most nutritionally dense food on the planet. Even though it is the number one superfood, we could call it, in the wrong amounts, it's very bad for you. So the
Comes back
dose
to
makes the
education
poison.
again.
Say again, Peter?
Comes back to education again, kind of knowing what you're putting on the plate.
Yeah.
If we think about someone who maybe identifies with someone who's eating maybe not healthy and they want to make a change, could you maybe walk us through a breakfast, lunch, and dinner that maybe is relatively easy to prepare, but is maybe a great kind of starter approach to healthier nutrition?
Absolutely. So if it was me, I would understand the power of protein. It is a really, really underrated macronutrient because it's just given hype for, the muscle building aspect of protein, and people confuse it with protein shakes. But starting a breakfast that is more protein and fat dominant, if we can tolerate it, we could go down an avenue on that on its own right altogether. But usually a great protein source, so I like to pick eggs. They combine proteins and fats together. I think they are a true superfood. And even though they're now starting to get the attention because they've been vilified for years for the cholesterol content, cholesterol is a huge topic of conversation in its own right. And again, we've been really poorly educated on it. But eggs in the morning, I think, are a great choice. Whether you combine this then with some low glycemic fruit, so you can use some melons, or you can use berries, are a phenomenal choice. And then even if you like to have, let's say, a toast sauce, like a fermented sourdough toast is going to be the best choice, I think, personally, to opt for over just convenience white bread. Or combine it with like a fish sauce, so smoked salmon, smoked mackerel. Those things can be incredibly useful. Again, in the right amounts. You have to be aware of the histamine tolerance of somebody. But for a breakfast, a protein and a fat source, so like eggs and avocado, eggs and fish, or eggs with a side of berries and sourdough toast.
Very different to the standard breakfast. If you think of cereals, anything that you buy in the supermarket with a monkey on top, Nesquik kind of chocolate. I mean, I have the feeling a lot of people grab for convenience cereals, which is a lot of sugar.
Yes, and it is that. And how many people have you seen weigh a portion out of cereal? Right? Because what a portion is and what people have, they are worlds apart.
Yeah.
And that's where people can also be misleading. Like, they can think something's healthy because of the box may have all the green traffic light system on it for a portion, but 30 grams of cereal is honestly surprising when you actually curiously look at it in one time and go, I've never eaten a portion in my life of cereal where it was just the one. So that's where it can be misleading. Again, in the mornings, we don't necessarily need to rush for carbohydrates immediately. And that's unfortunately what a lot of cereals are. I'm not demonizing cereal here. If you're going to be working out soon, it can be a useful, quick, convenient food source to consume. But if you're looking to optimize your energy and performance, you like protein and fats are probably the better choice earlier in the morning. And having a more slower glycemic release carbohydrate if you're not going to be actively training or utilizing that energy straight away. So yeah, we've been shown cereal again as the like gold standard of breakfast, just purely out of convenience because it's opening a box, add some milk to it, good to go. Whereas like taking effort to cook eggs and put some food together, but that's where, as we spoke, planning is really useful.
Yeah.
If you're pre-planned ahead, you know what you're eating in the morning, it takes the headache out of it. You just get
Yeah.
to work, and within 5 to 10 minutes, eggs are cooked. Your breakfast is good to go again, and it's far more nutritionally dense.
So you said eggs are good, sourdough ideal, some protein would be lovely, fish
Yep.
you mentioned.
Yep.
That's a good start. You mentioned berries.
Yes.
So that would be a good breakfast. Fast
Yep.
forward to lunch.
Right, so for lunch, I always like to, again, I will always prioritize a protein source. So whether that's one that we've pre-prepared in the week, defrosted, but beef mince, chicken, turkey, lamb, we've got fish again, but the quality of fish matters. I will then combine it with a starchy based source of fiber. So I like using broccoli or Brussels sprouts. Like, again, one thing I'll stress here is it doesn't have to be chicken and rice. Again, because that's probably what people are thinking eating healthy is. If it's bland and boring, you're not going to stick to it. So I'll always do seasoned meat. I will try and make like cardamom, cinnamon, add anything that's going to add some flavour to the meat. Rosemary is one of my favourite, and garlic, without a doubt. I think those two are like my go-tos that I'll just resort to. But when in doubt, the spices come out. So season your meat, cook with seasoned meat. Do some like fibre-based vegetables, whether it's broccoli, whether we've got sprouts, cruciferous-based vegetables. And then you can use a really good hack. The best satiety food that scored on, I think, the satiety index was cooked and cooled white potatoes. So you can boil them, steam them, cook them, allow them to cool. And what it does is it actually crystallizes the amylase, makes it more of a resistant starch. And then the actual beneficial thing is they get a increase in butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid, feeds the small intestinal bacteria. Really useful. You get a double whammy with that.
Cooled potatoes and green bananas, I think, right?
Yes, yeah, green bananas. Yeah, green bananas is another one. More
I
of a
think the cooled
resistant starch.
potatoes would be my thing. I'd grab too.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
green bananas
Yeah,
is a bit of a punishment.
beef mince and green bananas. Yeah, people will probably be cursing me out if they hear me suggesting that. But if it floats your boat, I'm not going to judge you because it could
you can
work.
choose.
So yeah, and then I think always opting, like my personal favorite. I'm quite fortunate that my sweet tooth, I love fruit. So I like having fruit after, whether it's apple, pears, or berries again. Again, you can use things like cinnamon, you can use like ground nutmeg, you can use five spice as your seasonings to try and zhuzh it up a bit, because that's how I like to do it. But that's just my preference as a lunch. So that'd be my lunch. And then in the evenings, I'm so happy you mentioned bone broth because I'm a big advocate of slow cooking. So I think meat on the bone is often overlooked as like the poor man's cut of meat. But the beneficial thing we get when we slow cook beef, like bone broth and meat on the bone, we get the collagen release from the bone, we're getting the bone marrow in it, a lot of macronutrients that are going to be added to a really flavorful gravy. So I love to do like beef short ribs, probably one of my favorites, or brisket, anything that's going to be more of sometimes even a bit of a fattier cut of meat works better in the slow cooker because the fat tends to go into the broth. And as long as you're taking into account that it is more macronutrient in terms of calorie dense, having a fattier cut of meat, you don't need as much of it. It works out perfectly. Again, combine it with like your root vegetables, so carrot, swede, turnip, onion, leeks can be phenomenal. And if you put it in for the day, set it to go. It takes 5 minutes to throw in the pot, add in your seasoning, add in your stock base or your frozen ice cubes if you've thought ahead like I do. Leave it on for the day, go and work, come in. You've got a really nutritionally dense meal there to go. And if you've made excess, you can then pot it up and save it for the following day. I think slow cookers are such an overlooked, I know we're in the age of air fryers at the minute, which are phenomenal. I'm not trying to knock it, but slow cookers, they are your best friend for prepping in advance and coming into a meal that's good to go.
Yeah.
So
hack.
if it was me, protein is a focus in every meal, and depending on how active you are with training is how I would split your carbohydrate intake through the day. try and optimize it either around the training, or if you're somebody who has sleep challenges, you could put your carbs as a more carb backloading approach. So you'd have them more towards the end of the day for the serotonergic effect in producing more melatonin to aid with sleep.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for that. Sit down with a coach. We covered a lot of ground there. Yeah, nutrition is a really powerful one. It was one of the, I think, recipes, excuse the pun, to me becoming a lot healthier. And I think people are stuck in the, what are we cooking tonight? They just do tonight, and they go to the supermarket, they buy that bag of cinnamon, and they just think for one meal, whereas you can kind of try and reach more economies of scale. You can plan ahead. So there's loads of information out there. You can also speak to Tom or me, but probably Tom's a wiser bet.
You're going to be better in the kitchen than I am, because I've seen what you can do.
I'd love to cook together with you once. I mean,
you certainly are far more skilled in the kitchen than I am.
I'm gonna do my guests some justice, because we do have some Q&A from a small WhatsApp community that I put together, people who owe me money, neighbors, friends, that kind of thing. We haven't spoken about the microbiome, but there's a question here about, is it true that what you feed your microbiome wants more of? Using an example of, if you start feeding it really healthy food, it yearns for healthy food. And if you're feeding it a lot of unhealthy food, it kind of also gets to know that and wants more of that.
Yeah, now this is an interesting, again, this could be a huge topic, but in some respects, yes. In some respects, not 100% true. But when we look at when people have any form of parasitic or dysbiosis, whereby we haven't got necessarily good and bad bacteria, we've got bacteria that are opportunistic, and the gut is an ecology of a system that is all these bacteria living together. It's only when certain species can proliferate, which are probably opportunistic, whereby we can have a challenged state in our GI health. So if we have strains that are more dominant to feed on carbohydrate and sugars, it can change neural pathways for us to crave more sugar, because we're feeding something in our body that's influencing our choices. And we bake. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I had to think of breakfast. I mean, it's such a, if you're already doing that there, for instance, a lot of sugar for breakfast.
Yeah.
So you're saying your microbiome will get used to that. It's even creating neural pathways, you said, to the brain.
Yes.
And
yeah. We see it a lot with whether it's called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or if someone has parasites. Parasites is a really interesting thing. They can completely influence the food sources we crave and choose, because we're fueling their existence, and they feed off that rather than our body being able to digest and assimilate it efficiently. So when we look at people with like opportunistic bacterial overgrowths, they will thrive and proliferate and have more chance to spread if they are given the right fuel sources. And carbohydrates and simple sugars are probably their most preferred function. They can do it with other food groups, but it's probably going to be the preferred one. Whereas when we feed this is going to be an interesting one. I wouldn't say it influences us to eat more healthy, but when we have a more balanced microbiome, we feel so much better in ourselves anyway. And I think because our status of health is, in general, we could call it in the green, let's just call it, you're consciously aware that you feel good. And with a clearer way of thinking, a clearer mindset, a functioning body, you make better choices in general anyway. So because you understand that if I feel this good from the way I've been eating, like you're a prime example of this, you changed your lifestyle, you started optimizing the way you're eating, and it made you feel so much better, and it gave you that desire to carry it on, right?
And
exactly.
it cured a chronic disease.
Boom.
I mean, eczema is almost a thing of the past. If
Yeah.
I go off the beaten path, it comes back again. But I kind of know Peter Charles's formula, that if I stick to it, I feel very good.
Yeah.
My skin doesn't complain. And I can set myself and my family for success when it comes to nutrition. So
there we go. Yeah, exactly. So there is, I wouldn't say it's a blanket statement in terms of that is how it is, but I would 100% say that it definitely has influence in both ways, both beneficially and non-beneficially.
You mentioned blood tests earlier on in the show. I know there are kind of stool analysis tests.
Yeah.
Is that something you'd recommend?
Yes. Now, people with, I'm not going to tell everyone to go out and get a stool map immediately, because sometimes good questioning and good blood work can highlight a lot of things. But if someone has severe gut health challenges and let's say they've been on this journey for a while. A GI map can be incredibly useful because it can show you your balance and strains and virulence factors of whether it's bacterial strains, parasites, and you can get a real clear insight as to the city that's in your body, whether it's like proliferated with not the right kind of guests in the excessive amounts, or whether it's the ecology is, because there are certain beneficial bacteria strains that are really useful, like the lactobacillus, the bifidobacteriums, and if you can see that those are downregulated or possibly suppressed, then useful way to see if we need either like pre or probiotic support. You can tailor your nutraceutical profile to, just even looking at what foods are beneficial for propagating with, like pomegranate's a phenomenal one. Pomegranate is probably one of the best selective antimicrobials on the planet. So it helps to buffer beneficial bacteria and it helps to sort of target opportunistic bacteria. So pomegranate's a great choice. Don't just go out and start nailing pomegranate, everybody, but it's just out there. But yeah, the more data that you have, I would say, even though, yes, it costs money, and everyone will say, yeah, but they're expensive. How much is your health worth? And when people look at me and I give them that question, you can't put a value on it because it's priceless, right? And your status of health indicates your ability to show up in every other area of your life. And I talk about this
100%.
very regularly on my social media posts, that your health is that cemental foundation of the dream house you want to build. And instead of building it on sand, you're building it on concrete. The dream house on sand at some point is going to fail. The dream house on concrete, given that you look after it, is going to stay there for, hopefully, see your body through your lifetime and maintain it. So the whole thing that you investing in your health and getting these tests done, they get you answers so much quicker, take the guesswork out of it, and you can start to tailor and get the right help and support and make progress much sooner.
Wow. So that's something someone could come to you for. So on my side of the table, let's look at a GI map, you called it. Let's look at some blood work. Let's design a plan which might touch on nutrition, which might touch on kind of a medical intervention that someone needs, or fitness or health, hormones, etc. Okay. Got another question here on the microbiome. What would your go-to strategy be for someone, or advice be for someone who's had antibiotics, chemotherapy in that direction, looking to reset afterwards in terms of nutrition, but also hormones, also experiencing dopamine? It's probably a topic on its own. And if you're up for it, we can definitely schedule a kind of a session where we go through the Q&As in a bit more detail.
Yeah, by all means. I think when you come to somebody who's starting from scratch, again, the body's in a position of antibiotics, unfortunately. As much as they've done so much good in the world, they are non-discriminative. They're like sending in the nukes. And then chemo as well. Yeah. It's that's a challenge, and building up from really base level is going to be so important. So hitting your diverse from water soluble, fat soluble, vitamins and nutrients, essential. Supporting neural health with good fatty acids from omega-3 profiles, essential. Going to be really important again for managing general old inflammation, because I think one of the biggest things we don't talk about is when our GI health is compromised, the immune function is also compromised. And you've got a double whammy there with chemo, because again, that's directly affecting immune function. So we want to be able to propagate with probably broad spectrum of foods that we can tolerate, because some foods may be sensitive, especially after something so extreme as that. And understanding that the food we're going to consume is try and start very gentle, like slow cooked foods, reducing general histamine load, trying to reduce as many inflammatory foods as possible to just get a status of health back of equilibrium. So keeping them, like the slow cooked meats is a great one that I like to use.
Can we pause for a second there? What are the top inflammatory foods that come to mind?
Good question. So we could dive down this, but trans fat foods, deep fat fried foods are going to be possibly one of your biggest ones. Alcohol is going to be one of the ones that's up there as well. That's incredibly inflammatory. And just more of your ultra processed foods that are very oxidized oil rich, hard palatable with excess sugar, high fat, salty, umami combinations. They are possibly going to be the most inflammatory foods you'll find. just because of they are like the perfect storm for generating what's called free radicals or free radical oxygen species, which just go around scavenging electrons in the body and they cause inflammation as a cascade effect from them. So we have to be very mindful that the foods that we eat, if they're going to be of those type of foods, it's not about removing them altogether. It's about being very mindful of the dosing and the moderation aspect, because there are times when you're going to go out with friends and there is nothing but that kind of food on the menu, and
Okay.
you don't want to be the bore.
So you were saying you want a broad diversity
Yeah,
of food that you're eating,
yeah,
goodness that you're getting in. You want to go at it slowly, so see how you respond to these foods,
yeah,
easily digestible foods, limit inflammatory foods. You
yeah.
mentioned a couple. What else?
I would say don't rush for supplements immediately. I think there's so much power in the nutraceuticals of foods,
Mm.
because I think so many people nowadays will search for like the one quick fix pill or the supplement that's got everything in it. But food is just such a better, more natural, in tune with our circadian rhythm and our existence, that food is an underrated tool. But if you're going down a point where the access to that food is restricted, depending on where you live geographically, supplements can be incredibly useful. And again, if food is nutritionally, like we know soil quality is been depleted over a number of years, so food doesn't have the same nutritional value it used to. So in some respects, we kind of do have to supplement with some key foods if we don't have access to certain broad spectrums. Like we could discuss things like if people don't have access to fresh or fatty fish, omega-3 fish oil is a phenomenal choice for us to have for neurological health, for general inflammation status. They can be incredibly useful for people that, even if you don't like fish, great.
Would you advise someone to first get tested, do the kind of mapping and blood work and all of this before designing a kind of a plan, or do
Yeah.
you set? Okay.
Plans, I think plans are very much tailored and personalized to the person.
Mm.
And you can't cookie cutter approach it. Don't get me wrong, there's certain things we can say, like protein protein and fats are great for your breakfast source. We can give general information that, trying to limit ultra processed foods is good information and good advice. But when we try and tailor, like, let's say specific supplements, huge red flag, because we do not know if someone needs that targeted support. Just because someone on, let's say, TikTok, a platform, has said it was the best thing they ever did and it changed their life, we can't use that as gospel. Lab work is incredibly useful. Questionnaires are incredibly useful. And one thing I will highlight with everybody here is if they do a food intolerance test, I think there's only one in the world, I think it's Cyrex, where it tests food reactivity on cooked and raw food, right? And most
Mm.
food tests only test against raw food. So it can be misleading because the allergic effect or the sensitivity effect and responsiveness can change when we cook foods. So it's something to be very mindful of, that it can be a warped sense of false security if you have a food insensitivity test done and it's from a lab where they're just testing on raw food, because the minute you cook it can completely change the profile and make it more inflammatory to you. So it's a really useful tool to understand that. I don't think it's here in the UK yet. I think America has it in Cyrex, but it's just being mindful of food intolerance tests. I'm not saying they're crap, but you have to take them with a pinch of salt, is all I'll probably say to people.
If you're at the table alone and you've gone through something like a long trajectory of chemotherapy, radiation, antibiotics, that's kind of the ideal moment to reach out to someone to sit on my side of the table
Yeah.
with me and go through it, because I don't want someone to get the feeling that they're alone,
Yeah.
and you need to recruit a board. I mean, you touch on so many corners of health, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
so impressive. You do fitness, you do nutrition, you do hormones, you can talk about the gut, right? So you can find someone like Tom, or you recruit a board, right? You recruit one person for for a different section. Maybe you only need one, right? But maybe it's a good message to share. Start recruiting your board of people who sit at your side of the table. And I don't think this kind of support always breaks the bank either,
No, no.
but I wouldn't want someone going through that alone.
I think it's such a key thing you mentioned because, again, when we look at the healthcare system, on average, doctors have, I think it's 9.8 minutes or 9.4 minutes to spend per client. And in that amount of time, you don't have the time to build rapport, go through someone's complete history, give them a detailed conversation, give me as much insight as possible to your background, how have you been feeling? And that's why good coaches and good, people that are working in the health and wellness space, like especially a lot of the coaches I've learned from the Institute of Health and I've worked alongside that study with, we understand now the power of, your health is in your own hands. And if you work with the right people, it can get you from A to B to C so much quicker.
Yeah.
Like a great example that I had for somebody was, there was a question on Google, why am I bloating? And there was over 16 million results. Now, if you've got time to sit through 16 million results on Google and find and research and be my guest,
Yeah.
I haven't. And that's why I chose to, when people ask me that question, invest in my own education, have what the amount of notes I have and resources that I've collected through the studying and hours and hours and hours of going through the research papers that the Institute put together. It's just, you get that answer there and then. Or even if it's a day of someone just doing a bit more research for you on all the notes and insight they have, compare that to 16 million results on Google, and you'd be a fool to want to pick the Google
Yeah.
choice of sitting through the internet with questionable sources. So yeah, it's so
You can
important.
and you'd save yourself a lot of time if you find someone to sit on a specific seat of your board and cutting corners, being able to tell you what information is important,
Yeah,
putting a plan together.
yeah,
So let's go to the end of the show. I call this the kind of parting challenge, but I want to give you 2 questions of each because we've covered so much. And I definitely want to do the first part of the show justice, where we talked about a very powerful trajectory shift you've been on. If people who identify with the first section of our chat, eating disorders, feeling unhappy in their skin, having a strange relationship with themselves, picture them driving past the billboard or seeing a billboard when they get into the tube. What would be your billboard message to them?
How many words am I allowed on it?
It's Tom Hudson's billboard.
My billboard.
And
Okay.
it's someone who is standing by the tube and you get you get their eyeballs on your billboard.
Okay. Okay. I would say health status isn't dictated by physical appearance, and the answers you seek lie in education from people who know more than yourself. And I think it's so true. I will always be a student of what I do. I will never say I'm a master. I will never say that I know it all, because I don't. I never will. But my curiosity and my desire to know as much as I physically can and continue to develop and grow and be as good a coach as I know I can be is why I will always stay the curious coach that wants to learn, grow, develop, and never set dogmatic principles of sitting in my own way and letting my own ego or my own beliefs cloud the glass of what is true and honest information that people need to hear. I think that's it for me, basically.
So you said your health is not linked to how you look. And the second one was find a mentor, find someone smarter than you to help you break through the cycle, to nudge you on the path to level with you, and maybe a mentor who knows what you're going through and is wiser than you. Because you also said in your story,
they may have the key to the box that you feel is locked, that you can't access. And I think it's so important that, surround yourself with people more intelligent, people that have been there, people that know what they're talking about, because that insight can change your life very quickly. And it can, if the sooner somebody's health improves or their position improves, there's so much more potential they have to enjoy their life and get the most from it.
Lovely. Now let's fast forward back to the end of the show. What would your billboard message be for someone who's unhealthy and wants to tap into the power of nutrition?
Okay, interesting. So for somebody unhealthy who wants to tap into the power of nutrition.
They're on the way back from work. They're exhausted. They don't know what to do in the kitchen. And the tube kind of passes. They don't go down on the tube and they see this billboard.
Yeah.
And that's the message to...
I think I would like to refer it back to what I said earlier with food is ingestible data. Now, how is the data you're feeding yourself making you feel? And just leave it as that as a questioning point for people. As a rhetorical question for them to read it and think, yeah, well, what did I eat today? How did I feel?
Yeah.
And just spark that curiosity of,
And if an outcome depends on that data,
yeah,
right? If you're trying to crunch statistics or whatever and someone starts putting in wrong data, your outcome's going to be wrong. And if your outcome is health,
yeah,
right? I mean, you could use a different analogy. What you put in your car
yeah,
needs to be a
exactly.
specific thing to get your car moving forward to gain momentum.
Yeah.
And so your
there's a
billboard
reason
would
we
be
don't
around. Sorry?
There's a reason we don't just throw chip oil in the fuel
Right.
tank, right?
So you'd say your food is data. Be careful what you're putting in your system.
Yeah, there's always going to be like data that makes you thrive and data that makes you hit the brakes and feel like you've got nothing behind you. So, and again, the more it all comes back to education and just being aware of it and listening to your body, because if you do have those signals, those signs where you're getting brain fog, fatigue, no energy, maybe it's time to just check the data that you're having and see if it can be improved or tailored to produce the better outcome.
I love it. So a kind of an audit where you look at your data, hopefully not alone, because that stuff is intimidating with all the terms. You need someone, right? And you don't want to rely on Dr. Google, as you said, because either you get 16 million responses or you get the wrong one or an unvetted one.
Yeah.
For this nutrition piece, the billboard's loud and clear. Food is data. Be careful what you're putting in your system. What about Tom Hudson's challenge? Say you can speak to the listeners. You can give them a challenge for the week.
Okay. Yes. I
What
thought about
would-
this. So, and I think this is such. Now, people watching is like one of my favorite sports. It's awful. But when you sit down and you're in a public space and you see what other people are doing, observing, and when I watch people sit down and eat, most people are either eating distracted on their phone or on the TV. Now, there's a simple challenge I love for people to do. For this week, one of your meals, I want you to remove all the distractions. So don't use your phone. Don't look at a PC. Don't do your work while you're eating your food either. That's like one of the worst things to do. Don't watch your TV. And I just want you to be consciously there. And I want you to make sure that you're chewing every mouthful of food 20 to 30 times so it becomes like baby food in your mouth before you swallow it. When we look at digestion and how impactful that is and the state of mind we're in, when we're in a calm state, it is so much more beneficial overall for our GI health and our experience with our digestion when we're in the right state of mind. So eating distracted leads to us eating quickly. It leads to us not chewing our food properly and combining it with the saliva, secretory immunoglobulin A. It leads us to get mismanaged signals of ghrelin and leptin, which is like the hunger and satiety hormone. One thing to do is just be consciously there in that moment with your food, unwinding. Ideally, like the gold standard is outside in green space. I know that's very unrealistic for a lot of people, but just remove distraction for one meal and see how much of an impact and how much better of the experience and grateful you can be for that moment of personal reflection and just disconnecting and enjoying your proper meal. Now, if you want to sit down with your friends and family, I would 100% advocate for that as well. Conversation while eating is far more healthier to the way we live than looking at your phone or watching TV. So whether you do it on your own or with your friends and family, just having a general heart-to-heart conversations in that moment, enjoying it, that's the challenge I set for everyone.
And the outcome they could expect or hope.
I
So say
think
they
a
do
lot,
that for a week. They put away all screens, telly off, phone away from the table, no laptops at the table. Or you go for a walk
yeah,
during lunch if you're
Yeah.
at the office. But just screens away, be present, do one activity, just eating. What kind of outcome?
the gold standard here with the food as well, and I love you mentioned it, is a short walk after a meal.
Okay.
5 to 10 minutes. The impact people will see, the improvement on their blood sugar, if they use a continuous glucose monitor or not, they will see an improved outcome for their energy. their mental clarity, and that post feeling of fatigue of eating a meal. Because managing blood sugar is one of the simplest ways for us to improve our health. And if we have a sedentary job and we eat sat down and we then stay back to work immediately, you will see that you will feel distracted, brain fog, tired within a very short space of time. But going for a short walk after a meal helps with digestion, helps with the overall blood sugar tolerance, improves your energy production and your energy management so that you're not needing to constantly feel like you need to snack within an hour of eating. That is the gold standard of one of the best lifestyle things everyone can do.
So 2 challenges there. 1, be present. Don't
Yep.
be distracted.
Yep.
Eat with people. Eat outside.
Yep.
Go for a walk is the second one. So
Yes.
the listeners maybe can choose. Maybe they do one or the other, or
Yeah.
if they want to do both, do both.
Phenomenal.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Tom Hudson, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. My whole outlook of the day, I'm severely sleep deprived at the moment, but my whole outlook for the day has changed, and I'm leaving this call inspired. And I think you have that effect on me, and I'm sure you have that effect on a lot of your clients. I want to say what a pleasure it's been to sit down and talk with you. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Tom Hudson, thanks for being on the show.
Peter, thank you for having me on. Again, this was an amazing conversation, and we will be speaking again for sure, without a doubt, because we're both on the same wavelength, the way we think. But huge props to you for this platform. I found your story personally fascinating when we first spoke, and it's been a real privilege to sit down and share it with you. So thank you.